Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we do a creepypasta called A Great Time. Lies. Truth. Two words that couldn't exist without each other. Without lies, there would be no truth, and vice versa. For plenty of centuries, people have tried to find a way to see if people are lying or not. Many have tried, but none have actually succeeded. Who knew it would have been as easy as just looking at the person? My name is Jason. I might seem normal, but I'm not. I'm suffering from a special condition. Just by looking at a person, I can tell if the same man is lying or not. What is my secret, you ask? I don't even know myself. Many doctors have researched me, but none of them were sure about what was wrong with me. Some explained it was autism, others were talking about diseases of which I can't even pronounce the name. But in the end, it's a mystery to everyone. In exchange for this, though, I have no feeling of morality myself when it comes to lying. To clarify, with an example, I could tell everyone that my grandfather had died yesterday, while he's still alive, without even knowing if it's true what I said or not. Because of this, I don't speak very often, afraid that what I might say would be a lie. When I hear other people lie, my hands reach to my ears to cover them. This to prevent me from spreading that falsehood as if it were the truth. Understanding that, I don't have a lot of friends in my current state isn't a miracle either. The ones I do have, though, often ignore my presence. Hobbies? How about participating in a sports team? Nah, that would require me to communicate with other people. Watching TV? That too won't be an option. Let's assume I'm watching an episode of some crime series. I would know who's fooling everybody with well-constructed lies at the instant said person opened his mouth. It kills the experience for me. You might say there's not much reason for me to live anymore. To that, I would respond, exactly, with a big exclamation point. Luckily, there's still one thing that keeps me going. Video games. It might sound silly, but just picture how it would be when your friends ignore your existence. You have no hobbies in the slightest, and even your own family takes a safe distance from you, as if you have some kind of contagious disease. It's understandable how I sometimes reach towards an imaginary world where all my real problems don't exist. To me, it's gameplay that matters, and I don't really care for the story, because of my so-called gift. It works just as well with text and voice acting as it does when I look at a person. A recent discovery of mine, when I was reading a book for school. Turns out, fictional or not, I always seem to be able to separate lies from truth, but as I mentioned before, to me, the story can go die in a fire, as long as the game plays well. I will have a great time. A great time. I was trying to beat the Elite Four on my copy of Pokemon White. The bench I was sitting on in the woods wasn't very comfortable, but the spot had always had a special place in my heart. The place I would go to when feeling alone. I was doing pretty well, about to beat the fourth one, specialized in the element of fight, when I noticed a stranger in the corner of my eye. I decided to just ignore him and continue playing my game, but instead of walking away, he approached me. He was then standing in front of me, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending he wasn't there. So I looked up and saw a boy around my age with short brown hair. He was wearing a pair of jeans and a yellow hoodie. "Hello," began the boy. My name is Jamie." My eyes turned to him and I readied myself to judge. Judging is the name I give to the use of my ability, by the way. The person in front of me. To then, I realized I couldn't. I jumped up and took my distance. He was just standing there, smiling, while I desperately tried to get my ability to work again. He gave me a confused look, probably because I seemed to be so shocked. I quickly pulled myself together and answered him with a smile. I noticed that the boy was still weirded out because of my strange reaction, but all he did was shake his head in the same fashion a dog would do when trying to become dry again. My suspicion didn't decrease though, not at all. In one way or another, he was blocking my ability. Maybe it's like that Jedi mind trick from Star Wars. Maybe my ability only worked on the weak-minded. This is how I'd always explain the fact that I can't judge myself. It was a strange assumption, but because of... I will now refer to him as Jamie, the name he introduced himself with. Jamie, I was seriously considering it. He looked at the Nintendo DS in my hands and asked, "Oh, what game are you playing?" I wasn't planning on showing him that, so I turned away, but he kept asking it. At one point, the boy even started begging. He angered me to a level that I'd never reached before. I grew so mad that I yelled, "Stop!" I do remember what I'd mentioned earlier, how I chose to never speak, but he was genuinely driving me insane. Jamie had taken a step backwards, his eyes had this insulted look to them. I assumed that he was trying to be playful, but it sure as hell didn't look like it. He turned around and left, and so did I. A feeling of relief struck me, but at the same time, I felt guilty. He wasn't aware of my condition, and the only reason I didn't trust Jamie was because of my judging ability, that it wouldn't work on him. I looked back, but he was already gone. With my mind somewhere else, I took my black bicycle and left for home. Along the way, millions of thoughts were swarming through my head, half of which weren't important. But then you had the thoughts considering Jamie, how he managed to block my power, why he had approached me, why he looked so familiar. When I saw Jamie, he instantly reminded me of someone else. But since it took me a while to actually realize that, it must have been a very distant memory. Oddly enough, he reminded me of myself as well, at least physically. It could have just been a coincidence, but I didn't think so. All this meant something, and I was going to find out what it was, at all costs. The sound of our doorbell echoed through the house. I didn't bother, because I was in the middle of the heated boss fight with Meta Ridley for Metroid Prime. I paused the game and went downstairs. When I realized my parents weren't home to open the door apparently, I sighed deeply, opening the door against my will, only to jump back and fall over a toy that was just lying around behind me. As I saw who was standing at my porch, Jamie, he quickly apologized for scaring me, and offered me a hand. I shrugged his offer off with a quick hand gesture. He took his distance again, waiting for me to get back up on my feet. "No questions?" he asked. I stared at him, at the edge of opening my mouth again, but I kept it shut instead. "You're a man of few words, aren't you?" he answered my silence. I realized he was taunting me, but I assumed that. Just like last time, he was being playful. "Do you want to know how I know where you live, or why I'm standing on your porch?" he asked. I nodded heavily. "I'll explain if you ask the question yourself." He was starting to piss me off again, but I remained calm. My reaction didn't appear to be the one he was hoping for, because he looked disappointed and finally gave in. "Fine, I'll tell you," he said with an unsatisfied tone in his voice. He wasn't exactly trying to hide it. "On my way home, I saw you entering this house and figured you lived here, so I came to this place," he began. "To ask for an apology." So far, his alibi seemed legit enough to be true, but because of the fact that I still wasn't able to judge him, I still questioned the reliability of his story. I couldn't believe my ears, though. Was he actually demanding an apology? I took a swing with my right arm and would have hit him if he hadn't ducked. He crawled backwards on arms and legs. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, calm down. I didn't mean to anger you, but you have to admit you were being a bit unreasonable earlier," he said with a constant fear of taking my arm to his face. I took a moment to reflect on my behavior and eventually came to the conclusion that in Jamie's eyes, it might have been a bit uncalled for. I wish I could tell him about everything though, my condition, the fact that I couldn't judge him. The problem was, I wasn't even sure of half that had been going on lately. Look, I even brought a peace offer, and Jamie showed me a cartridge compatible with the Nintendo DS. It was blank, so I didn't know what game it was. "You'll have a great time," he said as sincere as possible. I would have almost believed him if he hadn't smiled for that split second. Not a happy kind, but an evil one. The smile someone would give you right before being killed by said person. He regained himself quickly though. I took the cartridge, smiled at him, and closed the door. I didn't care if he wanted to come in because I still didn't trust him. Being able to block my ability, giving me that evil smile, and a blank cartridge. There was something just not right about him. I entered my living room and threw the cartridge somewhere. I wasn't planning on putting that in my DS. It could have been a virus or whatnot, but I couldn't help myself. The cartridge was calling me. Not literally, of course, but I was so curious. I picked it up, looked at it. Not much time later, I inserted it into my DS and watched the screen glow white as I slid the power switch up. I'm not sure what I was expecting to be on the cartridge, but out of all the horrible thoughts swarming through my head, none of them came true. In fact, the cartridge was just an R4 card, filled with a bunch of classic games, some of which I already owned. Others I had never heard before, just to give a few examples here. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time, Darkness and Sky, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks, and Sonic Colors. The list could go on forever. I played almost every single one of the games, and I had a great time. Exactly like he told me earlier, though. This gift made me consider the fact that Jamie wasn't that bad of a person. 2 months had passed, and I'd almost finished playing every game on the R4. Just one game remained, entitled, "Are You Having a Great Time?" I laughed, thinking this was kind of some joke put in by Jamie, for the words exactly matched his. I chose the game from the list and watched the transition. It all went downhill from there. The first thing I noticed, after choosing the game, was a lack of splash animations at the company that worked on the project, which only ensured me that this was Jamie's work. We were instantly brought to an unsettling title screen. Dark background, the title written in blood, a creepy music, everything you'd expect from a horror game. I was nervous. I had never played a horror game before because I couldn't handle the scares and atmosphere. That's why I never played Dead Space or Resident Evil before and stayed as far away from Silent Hill as I could, despite having heard that these were high-quality games. But I eventually trumped my fear and pressed start. The title screen faded to black. How naive can one be, is what a text box stated, and then faded away. Can one blindly trust a person? What if that person has a secret? The last of text boxes disappeared, leaving nothing to a black screen behind. The game began. The graphics weren't exactly what I was expecting them to be. The game had an overhead view, and the style was somewhat similar to that of Pokemon, having a character with a big head and a small body in a pixelated environment. My character was lying on his bed, when suddenly someone came up the stairs. My character woke up and hugged the other figure. "I'm home," he said. My character nodded. "I'm hungry. Would you get a snack from me, please?" the figure asked. I was in control and immediately went downstairs. When I arrived on the ground floor, though, I noticed that the entire room was pitch black. Only a small circle of light that surrounded the sprite of my character served as a light source. It didn't take long enough before I found the fridge and interacted with it. "You got a tuna sandwich, your brother's favorite snack," is what a text box had said. I was about to go back to my room when I noticed something, a red stain. I know, I should have went upstairs instead of approaching the stain, but I wasn't thinking straight. That's when I noticed that the liquid didn't just form a stain, but a footstep. I saw a whole trail of them that ended in a pair of shoes. You don't know whose shoes these are, I was told by the game as I interacted with the shoes. My character's brother ran downstairs towards the shoes. He pushed me aside, took the pair and ran away. The cutscene was over and I could move again. I tried to go upstairs, but the game wouldn't let me. Following the character appeared to be the only solution, and so I did. As I followed him, I ended up outside. It was dark and there was no other sprite except for my characters. I searched the forest the house was in, behind trees, rocks, as hard as I looked. I just couldn't find him, so I went back to the house I was in the beginning of the game and entered. Next, I went to my room and in the end, I was lying in my bed again. The screen faded to black for a few seconds. When the screen went back to the game, my character was still awake. I checked if I could come out of bed and I could. I noticed a DS on the table and in the corner and interacted with it. The TV lit up and I heard a familiar melody from the new Super Mario Bros. Game. The brother suddenly came upstairs and stood behind me. "Are you having a great time?" he asked as the text box kept its place at the bottom of the screen. When the camera moved downstairs into a closet I had never seen before, to show many bodies stashed upon each other. Some had huge cuts in their torsos, others had lost their arms, legs, etc. "Jason?" I stared in horror as those last letters appeared on my screen. My name. The game abruptly ended. What followed was a questionnaire with a layout similar to that of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, only the background was red and no music could be heard. "Do you care about your friends?" I was given two options, yes or no. These two options would present during the entire questionnaire. These two options. I chose no. The question took place for another one. "Do you care about your family?" Yes. The screen flashed heavily and a screeching sound could be heard. In the middle of the screen, that had faded to black during the screech, the words, "You lied," appeared. The flashing stopped and the next question appeared. I noticed that the screen had gotten dimmer. "Does anyone think you are useful?" No. The next question was asked through another text box. "Do you think you are useful?" Yes. I always believed my ability had some kind of use, that it could be used for a general good. The same series of events took place as the ones that happened when I gave the wrong answer, though. Flashing screech noise, the words "you lied" in the next question, but as I expected, the background was even dimmer than before. "Do you see a lot of good things happening in your future?" Yes, once again, I had given the wrong answer. Flashing, screeching, "you lied," next question, blah blah blah, dimmer background. "Have these questions open your eyes?" No. Again, wrong answer. Flashing was heavier than before, screeching was louder, words were bigger, and the background got darker. In fact, it was so dark that I almost thought it was black. One question appeared. "Do you want to live in your current state?" I wanted to choose yes. I still believed there was hope for me, but the other question bothered me. If I had to believe these, I would care about nobody. I couldn't have a future, and most of all, I wouldn't want to live anymore. The arrow was pointing at the option I believed to be right, but I started having doubts. What if I chose incorrectly? What if the background returned to black completely? I thought about the flashing blinding me, and the screeching making me deaf. No reason to live anymore. A tear had rolled down my cheek, and as I chose no, the DS turned off. I was just sitting there, mindlessly looking at the black screen. I should have cared, but I didn't. I thought about my family. Nothing. Thought about my friends. Nothing. My mind was empty of emotions. I could think straight. The questionnaire wasn't hinting towards suicide, but towards the abandonment of all emotions. The only thing that stood between me and the ultimate control over my power. It always happened, involuntarily, but from then on, I could control it. I was stronger. From then on, I never spoke a word again. It wasn't necessary. My parents kept on crying. They thought they'd lost me forever. I just didn't care. A few days later, I received a letter from an anonymous person, containing only the words, "Did you have a great time?" I never understood one thing, though. Why was it that I still couldn't judge myself? I have tried many times, but never had it work. So of course, one big question remains as I'm writing the story down. Am I lying? What the fuck? Well, this is a creepypasta or a what the fuck pasta, new genre. Anyways, what do I think about this creepypasta? It's actually quite good. The character, being this emotionless, judging individual, was kind of awkward at first, but I grew a little accustomed to it as time went on, and began to understand the character a little more and more, even, genuinely feeling really bad for the character. I mean, it's gotta suck to have no emotions and really just feeling useless most of the time, it seems. Jamie was an interesting character too, and for some reason, I just keep thinking of N. Probably because of, the Pokemon references and whatnot. But seriously, Jamie was a interesting character who I can only theorize as being someone similar to the main character. Maybe they have the same judging power and could block each other out, it seems. I'm not sure about Jamie, but maybe that could be the cause. The only theory I could really come up with right now. Now, Jamie was nice. He didn't seem overtly creepy or anything. Granted, some of his dialogue was a little off-putting, but really, Jamie just seemed like an ordinary kid, to be totally honest with you. Creepy smiles and whatnot all aside. Maybe Jamie is some otherworldly being, E.T., or some dark creature. I think that's the same thing. Anyway, it's not really important, but Jamie was an interesting character, despite only showing up for a bit throughout the creepypasta, really being the individual who delivers a game card to our protagonist. He was somewhat of an interesting character to look at. I was a little intrigued. I wanted to know a little more about Jamie, what he was all about. Maybe there could be a sequel, I don't know. Now, it was not as riveting as Bootman Bill, mind you, but it still was a somewhat interesting character. Now, the power was a little weird. It's my first time hearing of a human lie detector, and really I don't know much about it. I know you can tell people lying from, the way they talk or what they do, and honestly, I don't think this instant ability to tell if someone's lying exists, but if you know more about these subjects, please shed some light on it. If you have a proficiency in this, please let us know. Now, the game was kind of cool. It wasn't your traditional game. It was an R4 cart, which, if you don't know what that is, it allows you to play game backups on your Nintendo DS. And really, it was normal, all the games were just fine up until that final game, which was cool. It reminded me somewhat of Earthbound from what the game was stating out, like what the overall, story for the game was at the time. Somewhat, but it was an interesting, unsettling short game. But it went cliche a little bit. Especially with that blood title screen, for example. I mean, does it have to be written in blood? Can it be written in bones or something? That kind of stuff just kills the experience a little too. I mean, the bodies all let go because, hey, it led up to the bodies being there, and, it had that little twist in the whole game. Now, the ending was really where I said, what the fuck? It ends with some pretty dark and impacting questions and responses, and really, it does somewhat make me wonder if this character, is lying. Did this kid's ability to judge and reclusive personality really make him lose morals? Generally make him apathetic to the feelings and concerns for others. The final question, though, asking about living in this current state was the most impactful for this poor soul. The creepypasta does ultimately end up on making us wonder if this is a lie or not, to reiterate what I said a little backwards before. And remember, in the beginning, without truth, there can be no lies and vice versa. Could Jason be telling the truth? Does it seem believable? Kind of. Is he really having a great time? I don't know. I think that's up to you to decide. Is this all bullshit? What do you think? What would you rate this creepypasta, and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudaharn. I am out.